Welcome to Tune In YRDSB. May is Museum Month, and we're continuing the importance of museums and historical thinking skills with the York Region District School Board Museum and Archives. For listeners who may not be aware, YRDSB has its very own museum and archives dedicated to preserving the history of public education in our region and supporting meaningful learning experiences for students. Through hands-on programs, they offer students opportunities to explore historical artifacts, ask questions, and connect with history in engaging ways. This episode is the second in our two-part series, and today we'll be focusing on what the museum offers high school students as we join a grade 10 class at Mulock Secondary School, learning alongside the museum staff. If you missed our first episode, we encourage you to go back and take a listen. You'll learn more about the museum space itself as a grade 3 class investigates the historic one-room schoolhouse that houses the museum. To start, let's connect with museum staff to learn more about the programming they offer. Let's meet our hosts now.
Hi, I'm Christina Blake. I'm the education programmer here at the YRDSB Museum and Archives.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Mitchell, and I'm the curator at the YRDSB Museum and Archives, and we are live on location at the Heritage Schoolhouse.
Museums are a place of learning and lifelong learning, so it doesn't matter how old you are. Visiting a museum is always very important to add to, the cultural fabric of the community and make connections with family and friends and continue learning about history of places and spaces in Ontario.
And I think that our museum is pretty unique because we collect the history of the school board and the history of public education here in York Region. And for us, that's phenomenal because it's so interesting. We have this opportunity to step into the lives of all the students and the staff and how they contribute to education here in York Region. And I find that part is really fascinating because we're not stuck in this one little facet of what a museum is. It's so broad.
There are so many different types of museums that you can visit. And depending on your location in York Region, there are so many community museums here in our region to visit if you can't make it to one in a big city like Toronto.
Thanks, Rebecca and Christina, for that introduction. Today, we're live on location at Mulock Secondary School. As Rebecca described it, the museum is truly a museum without walls. And today, we're joining them as they work with a grade 10 class exploring York Region and the World Wars. Let's turn it back to Rebecca and Christina to hear more about what students can expect to see, hear, and even touch during today's learning.
When we look at what we offer as a museum, it's not only about coming to our space. We go to spaces throughout York Region. And because we are connected to the community, really we need to be out in the community. That's a big thing about, museums without walls. So one of the programs that we do run is a grade 10 program, the York Region and the World Wars. Yeah, we bring artifacts and questions and get the grade 10s to be thinking about what it was like in the lead up to the First World War and all the way through to the Second World War.
Yeah, the grade 10s really, they love the hands-on learning. It's something that maybe isn't as prominent in secondary as they move through history, and they haven't seen a history course since grade 8. So making sure that we remind them of those historical thinking concepts, how to think deeply about what they're looking at and how to make connections to them in a personal way or make connections with other parts of the history curriculum, not just about World War I or World War II. With our little introductory slideshow, students are able to ask questions and we give them some context in what they're going to see. And then as they move through the 6 stations, they are investigating local history. So we have some soldiers that are featured, one from Richmond Hill, and we have an amazing flight suit that they really connect with. And these are items that they can pick up and touch and really get up close with so that they can understand that this stuff was real, right? And one of the stations is about, the home front and thinking about rationing and how war affected people here in York Region and how teens and youth were really involved in supporting the war effort.
Yeah, and coming together as a community, right? And I think that by looking at the photographs and looking at the artifacts, they can really, it comes to life. The history comes to life, and being able to see, oh, wow, this was a real person. This is an actual flight suit that someone wore. I think that by handling those items, that it becomes more tangible for a lot of the kids.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily have them wear gloves when they're there with the grade 10 program. A lot of stuff is replicas, but the real stuff, we just give them some parameters. Don't unzip the zippers, right?
With that great introduction to the programming they offer, let's head into the classroom to hear more from Leah Verasamy, a member of the museum team, and history teacher Jesse Smiley and his students as they explore the artifacts.
Have any of you ever heard of No. 2 Construction Battalion? So No. 2 Construction Battalion was the largest segregated battalion in Canadian history. For 2 years, Black Canadians all over Canada were writing letters, and they were petitioning and protesting and fighting for the right to fight in the war, until in 1916, No. 2 Construction Battalion was established. So at each of the stations, you guys are going to learn about different areas of war and all these things that happened that made war possible. So No. 2 Construction Battalion is an exciting moment in Canadian history because it was this triumph of efforts. All these Canadians came together to make this thing happen. And so in the last slide, there was a picture of Kathy Grant, and she's kind of made it her mission to educate people on what her father did during the war.
It's really important that we analyze these things as historians, because as we learn more, we do better. It's really important that we as museums, we preserve this so that we learn from it. All right? That's the purpose of holding on to these primary sources.
All right, we're going to get into the artifacts. So when you're at the stations, in your groups, you have a worksheet. You're going to add your group members' names to the top. And then you're just going to work through each station. So whatever station you're sitting at now is where you'll start. When you're at the station, you're going to look at the questions and the inquiry prompts. So the inquiry prompts are going to kind of get you to think a little bit more critically about what you're looking at. And then underneath the title of the station, it also gives you a historical thinking skill. For No. 2 Construction Battalion, why are they historically significant? Why might it be important to keep these stories alive? All right, so you could kind of just have conversations with your group members and just do some jot notes. We're going to give you 5 minutes per station, and then we're going to rotate around.
When we look at the newspapers, what are questions we got to ask?
Okay, so say media outlet doesn't like something that's specific to a group or people, then they might change things to have bias.
So as you guys look through here, and I want you to take a second to start zipping through a couple, because look at the context. This one's from 1940. These all have something different to offer you. And they're going to tell you something different. Even look at the magazine. Let's start first by looking at the date that all of your stuff is published.
Yeah, it's all 1940, 1945.
You guys are my group that knows this. I know this for a fact. Look for the one thing you notice you can't unsee. What questions are going through your mind as you're reading these?
Well, most of the papers and stuff are about the war and stuff, and on this one here, on some of them there's just advertisements for businesses in the area.
Right? Look at the ads. Flip through these and see what you find, because it's just going to get more and more. It's going to build more questions than answers.
So when we're looking at primary sources, and you're going to see a bunch of them, if you're interested in history, you're going to be analyzing them in the future. The one thing that's really amazing about primary sources is that they were written in the time of. Here you'll see you have some postcards from the First World War, some letters from the First World War. On your table back there, you'll see newspapers from the Second World War, some here local, and then some that were used by the service overseas. And so when we're looking at primary sources, it's really important that we remember when we're looking at those documents that language changes, because as we learn more, we do better.
In addition to directly supporting student learning through elementary programs at the museum and secondary school visits, the museum team also partners with community organizations to develop exhibits, some of which have earned provincial and national recognition. Recent examples include the No. 2 Construction Battalion map that lets students learn more about the soldiers and families to the members of the battalion, and Standing in the Doorway, an exhibit exploring the history and lived experiences of the Chinese community in the region. Let's join Rebecca and Christina to hear more about this part of their work.
For some of the kids, they're a little bit hesitant, and you can see that they aren't sure how to engage or what questions to ask. But once we start leading them into that, and I'll say, like, feel how heavy this is. Like, why do you think it's so heavy? This is an actual flight suit that someone wore. Like, why would it need to be like really warm? You know, kind of asking some of those questions and getting the kids to throw out ideas, and you can kind of see the sparks in their eyes. Oh, wow. Like, you can really see that aha moment happen, which is really, that's my fulfillment, right? Like, okay, I got a kid to be excited about history. Amazing. Yeah, and I think that one of the great things that we offer here at YRDSB Museum and Archives is that continuation of learning from K to 12. But also we have students here who are emerging museum professionals. And really that is something that I don't think is highlighted enough, of how many museums in York Region, they support students that are in school, secondary school, or in college programs with, again, this love for museums, but we encourage them and help them to grow even beyond that graduation, right, from high school. Like, we continue that learning because, Christina, you and I, we're both lifelong learners.
Yeah, and we also have co-op students here from high schools that we support every term. And we actually have a teacher candidate here now as well who's volunteering with us to get some experience in a different way outside of the classroom so that they can be a full-rounded teacher one day in the classroom. And yeah, they just got into Teachers College, so I'm really proud of them. Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of things outside of the museum space. We do special projects, and one of them that continues to live and breathe is Standing in the Doorway, Lived Histories and Experiences of the Chinese Community. We are rolling out another one to do with No. 2 Construction Battalion, and looking at the stories and connections beyond this segregated unit in the First World War. What's some of the other stuff we do, Christina?
Yeah, the No. 2 Construction Battalion project is building on the new Black History curriculum that's come out recently for grades 7, 8, and 10. So we're very responsive to what's happening, from the ministry down, and making sure that our resources that we're building and programming that we're developing is aligned directly with the Ontario curriculum. And we have another large project in the works about the land that we're on, because we have lots of inquiries from teachers and consultants in our board who are doing amazing work on learning about the Indigenous history of what we now call York Region. And so being responsive again to the system, we really want to build programming that is relevant and is a need in our board, because just the two of us here, we can only do so many small little research requests over and over again. So when we continue to get the same research requests, then we know that there's a big need in the board for learning around that. So we do also sometimes offer professional learning aligned with what the Curriculum and Instructional Services Department is doing.
Yeah, and I think that by offering these special projects, standing in the doorway, the story of number 2, and now this upcoming land project that we're currently working on, really we're trying to make sure that our communities are seen and that we are doing good research, providing that connection to primary sources, and then making it available in the schools and in the communities and engaging the parents, having the students teach the parents. Like, I think that that's been some of the most amazing, fulfilling work that we've seen, was standing in the doorway and having engaged with the students and then seeing the students teach the parents about the history.
Yeah, that was amazing at Ellen Fairclough Public School. We did that last year. So we taught the whole school. We had programming all day for them. And then maybe 5 days later, Rebecca and I supported their parent engagement night, and we watched a lot of those kids walk their parents through the exhibit and tell them what they learned, which was just fantastic.
And that's where you really see the value of museums.
Primary sources play an important role in shaping both these exhibits and the learning experiences the museum offers students. So what does engaging directly with historical artifacts mean to students? Why do they think primary sources matter? And what stood out to them most? Let's return to the classroom now with Jesse and his students to hear more about their reflections.
We just went through a series we just learned a lot about our environment, where we're from. And we also engaged in some primary sources today. Would anybody here agree with me it was a little bit eye-opening?
Yeah.
What in particular was eye-opening to you for what you learned?
I think it was really interesting to see, like, all the historical things that happen in places that we go to often, like Main Street.
Why was that something that really sticks with you?
Like, I go to Main Street all the time, and it's crazy that there's so much history there that I didn't even know about.
Ellie, what did you take away from today so far?
I didn't really know much about the battalion, so I pretty much learned a lot about it today. A lot more people than I expected joined the battle, fought for our land.
It was just really eye-opening, especially with the blue and gold signs. I've never taken the time to actually read those, and seeing the historical value firsthand was really interesting.
Seeing all the graves in the video, because when you hear the numbers, you don't really think about it, but when you're able to see the impact the war had, then it kind of changes your view on it.
What's the power letting us we've spent a lot of a semester looking at primary sources. For you and me as not just teacher to student, but as people, why is it important that we continue to use primary sources to inform how we see the world and how we learn history?
Well, that's firsthand evidence of how people during those times experienced things, and for us to be able to look at that is very valuable, to be able to see how they lived and their experiences.
Without primary sources, the information could possibly be altered by someone.
That's powerful. Ellie, what do you think?
Well, if the information's altered and it isn't right, then it could be if someone was researching on it, it could be giving false information, and I guess that's not the real story, so it's misguiding people.
We're able to get things from when it happened instead of getting it from somebody else. So instead of getting secondhand evidence, I guess, we're able to see it with our own eyes and comprehend it.
As you were sifting through the stations, all of you were at different points. What was something that caught your eye and drew your attention to?
Probably the one with all the badges, because we got to compare them to find out which is which, and it's seeing all the different positions that you could take is I think it's really cool.
What else caught your eye as you guys were sifting through the stuff? Charlotte, what caught your eye?
I thought it was really interesting to read the letters, because they were hard to read, but they were interesting because it's seeing how they spoke in the time, and what kind of things they were saying.
The slang is different than it is now, isn't it? I mean, think about the things you guys say on the regular.
Oh my God,
Dude,
no.
Like, seriously, this is the thing we have a little bit of fun with in our classroom on the regular. I hear the things that you guys say, and I go, we had things that we said when we were kids too. Just what it was, right? But there's nothing wrong with that though. And it's changed over time.
But you can think about the radio and the communication at the time.
Absolutely.
And where they're getting their information from, right? So we have access to information all across the world at our fingertips instantaneously. So you can think about what they would hear and see in newspapers and in ads, and they would be from celebrities a lot of the time.
Absolutely.
And movies that were being shown maybe at the Old Town Hall in Newmarket. And before the movie started, there would always be a video, right? A little possibly propaganda-based video that would be shown as an advertisement beforehand. So we can think about how would that change your perspective on what was happening overseas.
Did anyone find that the newspapers were kind of catching their eye a little bit?
Definitely. I mean, it was so interesting seeing things that we see in today's world. Like in one of the newspapers, there's news about somebody getting engaged. And that's something you see like today too. So it was really like cool seeing that connection.
And where do we see that today though?
Magazines normally, or like TikTok.
Yeah, social media, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think of the celebrities you guys follow, that's the way that they cultivate their fan base, is usually through social media. But we didn't have that in the 40s. Not that many of us in this room were alive, but that's besides the point. So, but that's how the news got out, right? And, you know, I was talking with you guys about how you were looking at the newspapers from 40 to 45. What questions came up as you guys were looking through the paper? I'm curious.
Is this like really true? Like, did this happen? Is this factual? Because there's obviously a lot of bias and propaganda, especially with the war going on. So you have to ask yourself those questions.
And we can think about our historical thinking concepts, right? Thinking critically about the past. And so continuity and change. How does it stay the same? And how has it changed over time? So we're still getting information from multiple sources more today. So that's changed, that we have different types of information coming at us.
Sure.
But our lens and our criticality of thinking about what we're listening to and reading has to be on point today.
Willie, what caught your eye?
Probably the bomber jacket. When I felt it, I liked the quality of it. I don't know if it was I don't know how it held up in the years since it was made, but the wool especially, and also just how heavy it was, because they had to wear that every single time they went to go and fly. So the weight of that on them, I feel like it would be heavy, really heavy.
I mean, think for a second of stuff we go to buy at the store now. Is stuff made to last like it used to be? No. I think of clothing, technology. We're always buying to replace. And I think that's a lost art of thinking of how things change over time. It goes back to these thinking concepts, right? And you're right, the bomber jacket is wicked cool. Those were worn by Royal Canadian Air Force pilots over the Battle of Britain. We met those because what else was part of the Battle of Britain of someone that we met along the way? She was awesome, and she was an aeronautical engineer.
Elsie McGill,
the Queen of the Hurricanes, right? Imagine 10 years down the line. This is where I think our final big question should be for today. Imagine it's 10 years later. You've left high school, you're on to greater pastures. When you look back at talking to somebody who's going into grade 10 and they're about to study history for the first time, and they're going to engage with primary sources, what would you tell them? And why would you tell them that it matters, if you would?
Well, I would definitely tell them to analyze it thoroughly, because it's really hard, it's really easy to miss things or the significance of it.
I'd probably tell them how significant it can be to because it's primary source, so it's a real like real people,
You're not wrong.
To like appreciate it, because it's not every day that we get to have access to these things, so we should appreciate it while it lasts.
That's what matters, right? Do you think these things matter every day though?
I mean, I feel like understanding it is definitely really important because that's something that's going to stick with you, you know? Like memorizing things won't, but being able to understand it is what really matters.
But I think that's where we should wrap things up. Thank you guys for being part of this conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening. We hope this episode has encouraged you to explore some of the virtual exhibits available on the YRDSB website through Museum and Archives, and to learn more about the museum itself, or even visit a museum in your local community. If you missed our first episode, where we explored the historic one-room schoolhouse with grade 3 students, we invite you to go back and take a listen to hear what stood out most for them. We hope you'll join us again next time on Tune In YRDSB.